In January 2013, American documentary filmmaker Laura Poitras receives an encrypted email from a stranger calling himself Citizen 4. He offers inside information on illegal wiretapping by the NSA and other intelligence agencies, saying the surveillance Poitras had already experienced meant she was a target. Citizen 4 says contacting her puts him at risk, but that she must agree to serious precautions before he shares more, as this story is too important not to tell. Poitras travels to Hong Kong months later, unsure of what awaits. Finally, face-to-face with the mysterious source, Poitras and journalists Glenn Greenwald and Ewan meet this intense young man calling himself Citizen 4. In a tense hotel room interview, he reveals his true identity, Edward Snowden, an intelligence contractor who has unearthed shocking NSA secrets from his desk in Hawaii. But before we continue talking about this big intelligence reveal, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share your thoughts in the comments, and hit the subscribe button if you love documentaries. Now let's get back to the story. Edward Snowden has exposed the extensive infrastructure of the NSA, operating both within the United States and globally, that systematically intercepts virtually every form of digital communication. This enables retroactive warrantless searches, where any unique identifier linked to a target, such as emails, passwords, or credit cards, can be used to retrieve content long after its creation. The magnitude of this surveillance is unparalleled, and Snowden alleges that NSA Director Keith Alexander provided false information to Congress regarding these capabilities. Beyond the scale of trillions of scrutinized U.S. communications, the NSA has reportedly targeted political dissidents, individuals who visited websites like WikiLeaks, whose data is tracked, and participants in economic conferences and trade agreement negotiations. Moreover, the agency has been accused of spying on medical professionals and their patients, as well as attorneys representing their clients. Snowden risked his future to expose this shadow state surveillance system a threat to civil liberties. He chose to sacrifice his family ties and freedom to spark public debate and reform on government overreach. Now putting his faith in Poitras to share NSA's closely guarded methodology with the public, Snowden walks through encrypting top-secret documents for handoff. Poitras must protect these files and his identity to break the biggest leak yet on limitless state power in the digital age. After going public, Snowden knows his days of freedom are numbered. Hunted by intel agencies, he hides out with Poitras as media exposure threatens to give away his location. Snowden urgently petitions the UN to be classified as a refugee, knowing extradition and prosecution await back home. Seeing suspicious activity, Poitras realizes Hong Kong may no longer be safe for her confidential source material. She departs the increasingly perilous situation, entrusted with Snowden's encrypted files detailing unprecedented U.S. surveillance overreach. His daring whistleblowing hopes to rein in limitless spying powers through public debate, but both now feel state forces closing in. Alone awaiting asylum, Snowden remains driven by conscience rather than self-preservation, willing to trade his liberty to expose the shadow apparatus he helped build. Having tapped Poitras to carry his revelations forward undeterred, Snowden prepares to confront the very state security regime he professionally supported yet fundamentally questions. Poitras now bears the weighty materials capable of bringing that secretly constructed surveillance system to light. But having seen U.S. intimidation firsthand, Poitras knows publishing Snowden's leaked documents could put her own freedom at risk. With Snowden's defiant act set to ignite global calls for restraints on unaccountable spying programs, the stakes for both continue rising, along with the need to break silence. Snowden's future was plunged into uncertainty on June 21st, when the U.S. government requested that Hong Kong authorities extradite him back to America to face espionage charges. Despite the looming threat, Snowden managed to covertly depart from Hong Kong. His intended destination was Havana, with the hope of eventually receiving asylum in Ecuador. However, while in transit, his U.S. passport was abruptly canceled by authorities, stranding him at Sheremetyevo International Airport in Moscow. What followed were 40 tense days in limbo, as Snowden awaited his fate within the sterile confines of the transit zone. The U.S. aggressively lobbied countries to deny his asylum requests, severely limiting his options. Meanwhile, back in America, prominent politicians labeled him a traitor and coward. During his confinement, Snowden's leaks continued to make global headlines, fueling fierce debates about privacy and mass surveillance. Journalists Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras found themselves directly in the crosshairs of scrutiny. While some praise them for exposing controversial government secrets, others accuse them of recklessly endangering national security. There were undoubtedly moments when both Greenwald and Poitras privately questioned whether returning to the U.S. was worth the legal risks and hostile political climate awaiting them. Still, the magnitude of the NSA revelations compelled them to persevere in their reporting efforts. Like Snowden, they seemed driven by deeper convictions over shadowy government overreach, regardless of personal consequences. The tides shifted for Snowden on August 1st, when after 40 days in limbo, Russian authorities announced they would grant him temporary asylum for 1 year, finally bringing his time in the Moscow airport to an end. For Greenwald, the saga continued to unfold from the relative safety of his home in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, beyond the reach of U.S. authorities. While his legal jeopardy remained unclear, he defiantly maintained his vocal criticism of the U.S. surveillance apparatus in frequent public appearances. Poitras faced similar hard choices of whether or when to return home, weighed against a sense of duty to inform the public on a momentous civil liberties debate. So while Snowden had won a tenuous reprieve in Moscow, the larger question lingered over the role of whistleblowers and the unlabeled bounds of state power in the modern digital age. For Greenwald and Poitras, the answers were never clearer. Even in the face of uncharted personal risks on U.S. soil, their voices echoed Snowden's appeal for transparency over unchecked secrecy, and through determined reporting, they hoped to empower citizens to decide for themselves what represents freedom versus security taken too far. The revelations from Edward Snowden sent shockwaves across the world in 2013, but he was not the first former insider to blow the whistle on secret mass surveillance programs run by the National Security Agency. William Binney was a high-level NSA analyst who resigned in disgust over such programs being turned inward to spy on American citizens. For years, he gave interviews condemning warrantless wiretapping and data collection as unconstitutional. In Laura Poitras's documentary, Binney offers a compelling first-hand perspective on surveillance overreach within America's intelligence complex. He warned of deeply flawed logic underlying dragnet, information gathering on private citizens, and he chastised weak governmental oversight that let such activities metastasize rapidly into something far beyond targeting legitimate threats. Having made little impact at home, Binney took his grievances abroad to receptive foreign ears, where resentment toward U.S. spying ran high. That included German lawmakers, indignant over revelations that even Chancellor Merkel's phone had been tapped. In a dramatic showdown, Binney provided expert testimony to a special investigatory committee of the German parliament in 2014. His detailed account of American mass surveillance capabilities prompted expressions of outrage in the chamber, but it also confirmed the worst suspicions of many who felt violated by their ally and protector. Binney pulled no punches in his withering assessment while apologizing sincerely to the German people for the actions of his government. His testimony fed growing international pressures for policy changes regarding privacy rights versus national security priorities across free societies. Back in America, Binney praised figures like Snowden and hoped his warnings might fuel a renewed commitment to constitutional principles many feared were under threat from within. Though branded by some as traitors, to him they were patriots blowing the whistle to rein in government forces run amok in the shadows. The expanding exposés touched a collective nerve over who watches the watchers in the modern digital panopticon. For in the 21st century's global theater, if liberty was the casualty, then privacy was the first line of defense, the canary in the coal mine warning when freedom taps escape velocity even across open democratic skies. Greenwald and Snowden sat across from each other, the tension palpable. This was to be their last meeting for the foreseeable future. Greenwald slid a sheaf of papers across the table, his eyes darting around the room. This is highly sensitive information about the intelligence community's surveillance programs. We can't risk speaking any details out loud. After several minutes, he retrieved a pen and paper and began scribbling down cryptic notes, abbreviations, and code words only the two of them would understand. When he was finished, he passed the paper back to Greenwald. They repeated this dance, passing pages back and forth, the only sound the scratching of pens, for nearly half an hour. When they were done, Greenwald gathered up the annotated documents with care, then began meticulously tearing the documents and notes into tiny scraps of paper, creating a small mountain on the table between them. When he was finished, he scooped all the fragments into his hands and deposited them into his briefcase. As we have seen, Edward Snowden's actions and leaks case sparked major controversy. Some hail him as a hero and whistleblower for revealing secret government surveillance programs. Others condemn him as a criminal and traitor, charging him with espionage and theft of government property. So I'm curious what all of you think. Do you see Snowden as more of a patriotic whistleblower who exposed overreach and violations of privacy? Or do you view him more as a reckless criminal who compromised national security by leaking classified information? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm eager to hear your perspectives on this complex issue. And however you view Snowden, there's no denying the profound impact his actions have had on the world. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you want to see more content like this.